It's 5 o'clock, so I'll welcome everyone to the August 2025 KCIA Roundtable meeting. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into roll call.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eric. If you can just say here when I say your name, that would be great. So, Eric,
Here.
Allie, Jenny, you said Allie's coming late, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Brian, Dalen, okay. Matt,
Here.
thank you, Matt. Morgan,
I'm here.
thank you. Holly, I see Holly yet. Okay. Come back. Lisa, you're in the room, yes? Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Ed,
I'm here.
thanks, Ed. Mark,
I'm here.
Ken,
Here.
thank you, Ken. Evan,
Here.
thank you. Takashi, I think he's away. Guido, forget. Steven, I think you're muted, but I see you talking.
I'm here.
Thank you, Steven. Kelly,
Here.
thanks, Kelly. Ryan, Ryan, okay. And Velma, okay. No Velma for now. Maybe she'll come late. Okay. It's 1, 2, 6. We have 11 folks, Eric.
Great. And thanks everyone for showing up on what I know is traditionally a month that we've taken off in the past. So appreciate that. And Ayako or Jenny, do you want to just touch real quick on
The meeting minutes?
yeah, the meeting minutes and action in this meeting? Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, according to public meeting rules, in order for us to, the roundtable to take any official action, we would have needed to have the agenda posted 24 hours ahead of the meeting. And while we got the meeting agenda and the meeting packet out to all of the board members last week, well within that 24-hour period, I think they went out on Thursday. The very final agenda, there was a change to the agenda. The very final agenda, Matt wasn't included on that email, and so it didn't get posted in time. So we will approve the last month's meeting minutes and this month's meeting minutes in the next meeting, in our September meeting. And we don't have anything else on the agenda that requires a vote. So I think that should be fine. The rest of the meeting is housekeeping, presentation, and updates.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will skip over approving last month's meeting minutes and move right into public comment. And I'll start in the room. If there is anyone in the room that would like to make a public comment, this would be your opportunity to speak on anything airport related for 2 minutes. And I can't see the room at the moment. So someone will
John
have
Laporta has his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, John. Your time starts now.
Okay, I think we need to revoke the contracts with Sky Harbor and Sky Service. So this is to the King County Airport managements, taxpayers, and the public. The property management going rate is 15%. Why did King County International Airport Management enter into a contract with Sky Harbor with 50% of the revenue going to Sky Harbor for property management and 50% going to King County? It was justified in the Puget Sound Regional Council meeting that Paul Allen's hangars needed maintenance, which was disingenuous per Mr. McCaw, who subleased Paul Allen's hangar. Mr. McCaw stated Paul Allen's hangars are in good condition. Can you explain why King County International Airport team with a current staff of 32 members, 1 airport director, 1 deputy director, 14 managers, 1 supervisor, 6 specialists, 2 administrators, 1 engineer, 1 coordinator, 1 scientist, 4 interns with an annual operating budget of $18.95 million did not continue to operate the hangar and any other hangars or tied outs? With the airport being self-funded, receiving revenue from fees paid by airport tenants and customers and not relying on general tax, I believe the contract agreement between King County International and Sky Harbor is not in the best interest of King County taxpayers and needs to be revoked immediately. Taxpayer money needs to be responsibly managed and cared for in the utmost ethical manner, and I do not believe King County management is doing their job ethically, effectively, and responsibly. How long is the agreement with Sky Harbor? When will it expire? When can it be revised? When can a meeting be set up with taxpayers in King County explain these contracts and agreements and how taxpayer money is being spent to Sky Harbor and Sky Service to manage airport hangars, tie downs, and assets? What can King County managers do to revoke the Sky Harbor contract immediately and Sky Service? How do we stop the disingenuous by King County management about airport agreements and operations? I have sent emails to every King County council or King County member on the roundtable starting in May, June, July, and August. This has been a known issue for the last 9 to 12 months.
Mr. Laporte, that's 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, John.
Welcome.
Anyone else in the room there to comment today?
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay. How about online? Anyone in the webinar with a hand raised that wanted to make a public comment?
I don't see anyone in our attendees with their hand raised just yet.
Okay. With that, we will move on to housekeeping items. And Ifo, I'll let you take the lead on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Jenny. I was just gonna ask Troy or Matt, can you transfer over Holly into a panelist? You can.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Of course, Jenny, take it away.
Yes, so we asked Lisa and Holly to be our member highlights for this month. And while Holly gets transferred over, let's start with you, Lisa.
Okay, my name is Lisa Krober. I live in the Allentown neighborhood of Tukwila. And honestly, you guys, I have no idea how long I've been sitting on this round table. But I know that part of the inspiration of accepting it goes back to when Southwest Airlines was looking at setting up operations here. And then I was asked to be this community member, and I said yes, of course, so I could have watchful eyes on what was happening. I have absolutely zero airplane background, although oddly enough, airplanes always seem to be a part of my life from when I was a very little kid. Back in the 60s, when you'd get loaded up in the station wagon with all your siblings and you were banned from the house, my dad would take us out to a little community airport and we'd sit at the end of the runway watching the airplanes take off. Fast forward, I lived on Lake Union for about 18 years. So Kenmore was a part of my life, especially in the summertime, every 5 minutes from sun up to sundown. And 25 years ago, I moved down here to what I refer to as the deep south on the bayou, because I have the luxury of living on the Duwamish River. And the airplanes again, out there. Somewhere in there, I spent a lot of years skydiving out in Issaquah, what is now Pickering Shopping Mall, used to be an airfield. And that's kind of the long and short of me and airplanes. And I am mostly pretty passive, but I do pay attention. And that's me on the round table. I think that sums it up pretty good.
That's great. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like you've lived in some pretty interesting places.
I don't know how interesting, but I do find entertainment, and I'll fly anywhere at the drop of a hat. So yeah, that's me and airplanes. That's all I got for you.
Thanks, Lisa. And Holly, we also asked Holly to share a little bit about herself and what brings her to the roundtable board.
Thanks, you guys. I made 4 slides. Can I share? I know this is surprise slides.
Hey, Holly.
I'm happy to submit it for the packet later. It will make no sense to anybody unless they hear the stuff.
Okay, Holly, I just changed your settings, so I hope you can present now.
Okay, I'm gonna try. It's really about, can I do it on my side? All right. Okay. So the question that always comes up when somebody asks me, they're like, Holly, and they kind of phlegm my last name because it's scary looking. So I thought I'd offer the phonetic spelling of my last name, which is Krejci. There's no skis. I don't even know how to ski, just Krejci. It's Czech, if that helps. And I don't have any connection to the Czech, except for I really do like a good kolachki. I've been in Georgetown since 2003, so I'm a resident of Georgetown, which brings me to slide number 2. This is fun. There we go. Where do the little doodads go? Georgetown, which is claim to fame as Seattle's oldest neighborhood, which is kind of not true. It's actually King County's oldest neighborhood. Georgetown was founded before the Denny Party was founded in West Seattle. Fun fact. And Georgetown is home. Oh, that's my doggo. Georgetown is home to the King County Airport. Fun facts. I love to share some history about Georgetown. Georgetown was the first airplane ever to land in Washington State, was in Georgetown at the Meadows Racetrack, which is kind of like the south end of what is now Boeing Field. And that was in 1910. And Charles Hamilton had a successful landing. And it was also Georgetown's also home of the Washington State's first airplane crash. You can see there that Clifford Turpin took a turn right into the grandstands of the Meadows Racetrack. I like to show this picture of the Meadows Racetrack because it also gives you a sense of how large the Meadows was at one point in time. They had 600 stables and grandstands that could sit 6,000 people. And because Seattle was dry, everybody came to drink and party in Georgetown, which is kind of still the same, but Seattle's not dry anymore. Why do I participate in the roundtable? Number 1 is to nudge for better. I truly, truly believe that everybody should have the opportunity to have a solid quality of life, regardless of what house they could afford or what neighborhood they're in. So clean air, clean water, and low levels of noise when possible. Yes, I know I live next to an airport. Happens that, like Lisa, I like aviation. I'm an Army brat, and my dad was a helicopter pilot, active duty for 30 years. So I understand the whop, whop, whops of the helicopters, and I can also understand that they can be very annoying. And then lastly, there was opportunity. This is a nice way of saying no one else really wanted to do it at the time that I was appointed to the roundtable. And like Lisa, I got involved because of a little bit because of Southwest. But more so because of the master planning process that was happening around 2015, 2016, 2017. That was really my interest in getting involved with the roundtable. And I stay involved because it's become a lot more fun, quite honestly. I think this is the group that's going to make the changes that we really need to see. So there we go. That is me.
Ollie, thank you so much for that, and it's fun to see the history too. So thanks for sharing those pictures. I have not seen those before.
That was fun. Thank you. So we'll be reaching out we've heard from 4 of you so far, and we'll be reaching out to other folks for a new member highlight, 2 new member highlights in September as well. So be on the lookout out for those. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to cover in our housekeeping issue was the new agenda format, and just another explanation of what this new format is that we're trying out, and a request for your feedback after this meeting and as we move forward. So the new agenda format is essentially we're going to have time for presentation and updates, and then in every meeting, and then if we need more discussion, then we'll have dedicated time for discussion in the following meeting. That doesn't mean that we aren't going to have time for questions in the meeting where the presentations and updates happen. You'll see that today. We'll have a little bit of time for questions after every presentation, but if it looks like it's turning into a longer discussion, then we're going to make a recommendation that we hold the discussion for the following meeting. And everybody, of course, can also present questions in a written format if they want to respond. Make sure they get their questions, then and also give folks time to prepare to answer those questions. So that's an option as well. So if you have a question, it didn't get answered following the presentation because of time limits, feel free to submit those questions in writing. We'll make sure that they're in the meeting packet as well, and so they'll be on the record too. Okay, so then I think I'm going to hand it off to Matt to talk about the Open Public Meeting Act and public comment process as it relates to the airport. You ready, Matt?
Yeah, certainly, Jenny. So there's been some questions around the public comment process for our meetings here at the airport. We've checked in with our boards and commissions people, so I just wanted to provide a little clarity around that. We will continue to have a public comment period at the beginning of every meeting. And this, like Mr. Chair said at the beginning, on any relevant or any airport topic that people want to bring to the roundtables desire can speak during that session. We also are able to take written comments. These need to be submitted to the community outreach inbox 7 days prior to the meeting. If you would like them to go in that month's packet, we have to have some time to get them combined and into the packet that we have to send out 3 days prior to the roundtable members. And if we do not get them during that time period, they will be automatically just sent into the following month's meeting packet. The other thing we had questions around is specific topics. Are we able to open up public comment for a specific topic? And the answer is yes. That is done at the direction of the chair. So if the chair would like on one of the presentations to open up public comment around that presentation, for example, they have the ability to do so. And if we know that in advance, we will mark that on the agenda, that there'll be a second public comment or a third public comment period specifically for those agenda items. I'm happy to take any questions. I know that was fairly substantial and lengthy.
Any questions about the public comment rules that Matthew?
So hearing none, I'll just add one last piece that for folks, if you have a public comment or questions on the public comment process, it's all on the airport's website on the roundtable section. So you can find what I just said there if you don't remember.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, that's it for housekeeping.
Okay, moving on to presentations and updates. There are a couple of updates, I think, on the RNAV outreach. This is the approach procedure outreach. I'll briefly give my update, and then I think Mark McIntyre has an update as well. I attended the Community Coalition meeting a couple weeks ago to present some background information. It's the same background information that's been presented here to the roundtable. I offered to take that to the Community Coalition and walk them through what our instrument approach is, how are they used, which ones are commonly in use today, and where we are seeing advantages in asking that the FAA favor the RNAV, the new RNAV approach. So spent a little time doing that and answered a couple of questions, and I think it was a positive event and outcome. And I think Mark, I'd invite Mark McIntyre to comment as well, because I think he's followed up on some of the questions that came up.
Yes, I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you'll probably recall, out of the community engagement, I think both Velma and Allie wanted to make sure that we checked in with some of the other stakeholders who might have concerns about aircraft noise and aircraft noise impact on different segments of our community. So initially, Velma referred me to the Puget Sound Keeper Alliance. I checked in with Kelsey Furman at the Alliance. She is an attorney, not a scientist by her own admission, and said that they didn't really have any data on noise impact or emissions impact on Puget Sound waterways. She said they really had no objection to what we were proposing, but they did want to continue to do their due diligence. Kelsey passed me on then to a woman at Maritime Blues Quiet Sound Program. So this is an effort amongst the maritime industry, primarily the shipping industry, to quiet the noise that the vessels make in Puget Sound in the hopes of mitigating the impact on the southern pod of orca whales. So I spoke to Rachel Aronson there, and again, she said that they don't have any modeling or any data on aircraft noise impacts. They actually have hydrophones on the bed of Puget Sound, and they monitor marine traffic. And she said that she's not aware of those hydrophones picking up any aircraft noise. So she didn't really have any data on whether aircraft noise would impact marine life in Puget Sound. Rachel, in turn, has referred me to Lovell Pratt with the Friends of Puget Sound. They also do some kind of monitoring. I have not been in touch with Ms. Pratt yet, but I will. The other outreach I made was to the Seattle Port Commission President Hasagawa, who is a friend of Velma's, and Velma was kind enough to provide an introduction. So I've reached out to the commission president. I haven't heard back yet, but those are the kind of levels and kind of different outreaches that we're trying to make to ensure that stakeholders that might have an opinion or a concern about prioritizing the RNAV approach would have a chance to weigh in. So happy to answer any questions, but that's where we are as of today.
Thank you.
I know this has been a topic for the last couple of meetings too, so I'd open the floor to any questions about this in general. Evan, you've got a hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious if anyone's reached out to the FAA to see if the RNAV approach had any more impacts on them than the existing ILS or visual approaches that they normally assign.
Can I take that, Eric?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So Evan, I will say that as a pilot, we have, or I have personally, and the company I previously worked for, we prioritized requesting the RNAV approach. And I'll say that we had very good success requesting and receiving clearance for that approach. I have a couple other friends who have prioritized it as well. They said they've had pretty good success receiving a clearance for that approach. It is dependent on the controller specifically and whether they think that they can integrate that approach with other traffic flows. But my sense is that as the approach is requested and granted more frequently, that the controllers as a group are becoming more comfortable with using it and issuing clearances for it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, the reason I ask is I know Sea-Tac has some RNP approaches as well that I've never heard used, and I believe it's because of either airspace conflicts or some other issues on the FAA side. So they always stick with the visual or the ILS into Sea-Tac as well.
Right.
Thank
you. Any other questions on the?
Velma has a question here in the room.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to say thanks to Mark for following up on to all those different organizations. I think that your due diligence really helped a lot, but the issue has to do with has there been any kind of study that you know of from the air noise?
I'm sorry.
And also, I wanted to introduce you to Alice Fong. She is a member of the coalition. She's here to also just kind of like listen in. But I wanted to ask you, of all the different organizations that you went through, you said that there has been no studies done around the air noise.
There have been no studies done on the impact of aircraft noise on either water quality or marine life in Puget Sound.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I should footnote that no studies done that I've been made aware of thus far in my outreach.
Mark, before we move on, what are the next steps here? What do you think the next steps should be?
Well, the immediate next steps, I'm awaiting, as I said, a response from Port Commissioner Hasagawa. I'd like to get her perspective, and then I'll reach out to the Friends of San Juan and see if they have any input. And unless I receive further referrals, I think that we will have reached out to all of the stakeholders that we've been aware of that could possibly have an opinion on prioritizing the RNAV approach. So I think as I'm seeing it, we kind of have completed the outreach part of it. And I think then the next step after that would be to come back to the roundtable and see if we're at a level where people are comfortable signing a letter that we would send, a formal letter we would send to the FAA requesting that the RNAV approach be prioritized.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Let's see, our next agenda item is the airport was going to, I think the airport was going to bring someone to talk about insurance requirements and how that works with minimum standards. Is that right?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, I think, there's been questions on airport insurance, so both, minimum standards, lease agreements, et cetera. So we've invited Lindsay Wright from our risk management office to come speak to the roundtable this evening. We apologize. We had some technical difficulties last month, but she's here with us this month. And Lindsay, you should be good to speak.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. So thank you all for having me at the roundtable. I want to share a bit about how we approach setting insurance requirements for airport tenants and businesses that the county contracts with. So hopefully this helps clarify the process and some of the reasoning behind it. So something I think that's really important to keep in mind is that our goal is balance. So our job is to make sure that the county is protected from risk and helping make sure the airport runs smoothly and safely. We're also very aware that we need to be fair and thoughtful to the processes and the businesses operating here and who we're working with. So the question you're probably wondering is, how do we do this? We do this in two parts. The first part is we start by understanding the business and the work that's being done. So when a new agreement comes our way or when we're reviewing an existing one, we start by learning the tenant's operations or the work that's being done on behalf of the county. We will ask specific questions about what the business does, who's involved, a lot of other really small detailed questions too. So that way we can get a clear picture of risks that may be involved. We recognize that every business is unique. So whether it's a flight school, a fuel provider, or an aircraft mechanic. So because of that, our recommendations may differ depending on the exposures and the risks that are involved. The second thing we do is our homework. So we gather all of that information, and then we work with our insurance broker who brings expertise on the latest market conditions and appropriate coverage. We also look at what similar airports may require for similar businesses. And then we look at other identical businesses at KCIA to make sure that we're being fair and consistent whenever possible. With this, we consider when the agreements were put into place. We also recognize that insurance markets and exposures change, and our requirements need to reflect that. So that's what I had prepared to share. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure we have a couple questions, and I'll go ahead and start. Are there standard requirements in place, or are the insurance requirements all handled on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we review them on a case-by-case basis, and while we're reviewing them on a case-by-case basis, we also look back to see what we've previously required for identical businesses. And then we also take into account what other airports that are similar to us may be requiring.
And is so that review process, typically how long does that take, and what do the procedures look like for a potential tenant?
Yeah, good question. It varies on how long it takes, depending on how quickly we can get information, what other work we have that we're juggling. We do put a high priority on it because we recognize that we want businesses to be able to keep operating and we want business to keep flowing. So it often takes us a couple of weeks, depending on the information that we have available and how quickly we're able to connect and do our homework.
And this is a question maybe more directed at the airport, but it was my understanding that there was going to be some standardization of requirements. Did I misunderstand that?
No, Mr. Chair. We do try, like Lindsay said, we do try to keep it consistent across similar or exact same businesses across the airfield. We are working with them right now. Painfield has a matrix. I think I showed it at one of the meetings. We're working on creating something similar, which would be kind of a minimum for each category. We'll still have, risk review for each particular business, but it would be the minimum threshold that would be needed for each kind of category.
I see. And when do you expect that might be published, ready to publish?
Lindsay, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mr. Chair. I would expect it in the next few months. Yeah, we want to be really cognizant of it.
Okay. Let's see. I'll turn this over to other members that have questions, and I see Kelly has a hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Eric. Can you contextualize how volatile these different kind of insurance pieces are and the liability? Like, how much do you often see that fluctuate over time, or kind of is it just try to understand I don't know how much it fluctuates.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. It can fluctuate pretty significantly based on some of the lengths of these agreements that we've seen before. So if we're renewing an agreement year to year, it's probably not going to change wildly, unless there's been a huge shift in the market. But if we're reviewing something from 5 years ago, there's definitely the chance that the market has shifted since then.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Anyone else with questions on this topic? Okay, I don't see any hands up. Lindsay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll move on to the next agenda item, which will be a presentation from Dr. Elena Austin from the University of Washington on the impacts of lead on community health. Dr. Austin, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks very much. I do have a presentation to share, if that's okay. There we go. All right, so I'll try and keep this at 10 minutes. There's quite a bit of information in this presentation that I'll be sharing with the group and will be posted as well. Please feel free to ask questions after or reach out for any clarification. Today I'll be talking about the impacts of aviation emissions on community health, and we'll go through two parts. One, we'll be discussing lead and lead emissions, both in terms of what we understand on the emission side and then some evidence that we have in the published literature on health impacts. And then we'll talk about other types of emissions from airport activities. All right, so my name is Elena Austin. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences at the University of Washington. And contents and parts of this presentation have been prepared with some of my colleagues listed here, in particular, Dr. Edmund Sea-Tac, professor in DEOHS as well, and Dr. Tim Larson, emeritus professor in civil and environmental engineering. So, aviation public health, why does this topic of emissions matter and matter in particular for King County? As I'm sure you've discussed in the past, aviation activities generate a range of air pollutants with established health effects. And there's really two major fuel types of concern that we'll talk about, or that can lead to emissions: leaded aviation gasoline or avgas for piston engine aircraft and Jet A fuel for turbine engines. And populations living or working near airports may experience higher exposures to lead, ultrafine particles, nitrogen oxides, and other pollutants. And we'll talk about that in the presentation. And of course, you all know this, but King County has multiple airports with both of these types of traffic represented. And so understanding local emission sources and exposure is quite important for assessing public health. And understanding how airborne pollutants from aviation potentially could harm neurological, cardiovascular, and respiratory health was a topic that the EPA undertook and produced a finding in 2023, which we'll discuss in a moment. So first we'll talk about leaded aviation gasoline. So piston engine aircrafts, or the use of aviation gas to fuel piston engine aircrafts, account for approximately 70% of airborne lead emissions in the US. And so this is not all sources of lead. This is those that are emitted directly into the air. It's important to note that distinction. It's also important to note that in general, even very low blood lead levels, and those are levels of blood found circulating in the blood, are linked to adverse neurodevelopmental and cardiovascular outcomes. And this is established, but in particular, there's been some lead fact sheets developed for some of our community members that go over some of these impacts. In 2023, the EPA was asked whether or not there was a finding of endangerment for the use of leaded aviation gasoline. And they did, in fact, issue a finding of endangerment, and it was on the basis that there are no safe levels of lead. And lastly, one of the challenges with lead emissions is even after emission, it's a persistent, it's a metal and it's persistent. And so it lasts for a long period of time. And this is, of course, an issue for communities that may have multiple sources of lead in their environment. They have an additive exposure. So I discussed emissions in the US in general. One of the requests at UW that we tried to fill in response to a concern from King County Community Airport Coalition was to understand what the airborne lead emissions looked like in King County. And this is based on self-reported emissions data that's reported annually to the EPA. And what we found was in King County, 58% of the facilities that emit lead into the air are airports. 42% of the facilities that emit lead into the air are not airports. So there are other types of generally point sources or industries. And of the emissions that are put into the air of lead, 70% are from airport sources and 30% are from non-airport, which aligns very much with the overall US analysis. So King County is actually quite reflective of the US as a whole. All right, so what are the impacts of using leaded aviation gas? And this is where there is starting to be analysis to better understand how these airborne emissions might impact populations. But as you can note from the papers that are cited here, a lot of this is emerging work. It's not something that's been previously carefully examined. So one example that's been published, and all these references are in the presentation at the back. In California, there was an analysis done around a county airport, looking at the blood lead levels of children in proximity to that airport and finding strong associations with their blood lead levels and their proximity to the flight paths, as well as for those downwind of the airport. And another example from North Carolina, they collected information across the state, looking at, again, children who had blood lead testing. This was routine blood lead testing through the Department of Health, and they found elevated blood lead levels up to 1.5 kilometers surrounding these airports that were using leaded aviation gas, and they found stronger effects downwind of the airport as opposed to upwind. Lastly, an example from Colorado, which again showed at increased distances from the airport, they found a decrease in the blood lead levels of children. And here I've adapted a figure from the North Carolina study showing the relationship between blood lead level here on the y-axis with 3 micrograms per deciliter being the average that they were observing in these children. And for those of you who are less familiar with blood lead testing, the goal is to have, or the limit for children is 5. So most children in the study were actually below the recommended limit, which is good. But they did see this marginal increase. And again, it's a small amount, but they saw a marginal increase related to the distance from airports using leaded aviation gas. So in summary, there's still a lot to learn on the topic, but there does seem to be a consistent signal of a small, significant increase in blood lead levels in children living near sources where there are airborne emissions. Lastly, there's a local context. This is a study that was recently published in Bellingham. I actually just found it in the literature review. I was not involved. But looking not at blood lead levels, but looking at lead deposition downwind of a local airport, and again showing emissions in our enrichment in the lead concentrations collected in the air downwind of the airport. All right. What about non-children or adults? There's very limited information actually on the impacts of exposure to airborne lead from aircrafts in adults. There's one fairly recent study that looked at the association amongst older adults living within 1 to 3 kilometers downwind of single runway airports, and they found an association with the proximity to these airports and cardiovascular mortality. And this is a somewhat plausible biological pathway. The EPA has done some integrated science assessments for lead, meaning they've looked at the overall impacts of lead on health. And there is a mechanistic pathway linking lead exposure through its increased oxidative stress in the body to the development of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. And now I'll just briefly talk about non-lead aviation emissions. This is an area that we've studied fairly extensively in the Seattle area, as well as colleagues from around the world, really. And we do know that in addition to lead emissions from the use of avgas, jet A fuel also increases certain types of exposures in the communities in proximity to flight paths. And what we've shown here in the Seattle area, and has been again shown elsewhere, is that there are elevated ultrafine particle levels measured several kilometers downwind of airports, including Sea-Tac. We've also done source apportionment of the air pollution over the Puget Sound area. And we found that really there's many sources, and this is probably not surprising to any of you, many sources of air pollution, and aircraft's really not unique. And many of our air pollution sources in the region are actually related to roadway traffic. So diesel and gasoline emissions from roadways contribute fairly significantly to particles in the ultrafine region, as well as to black carbon, nitrogen dioxide. We could talk more about this if you have questions. But the aircraft in particular dominate the ultrafine, or the 10 to 18 nanometer particles. And so essentially what we conclude is that residents near airports face mixtures of airborne exposures from both aviation and non-aviation sources, and that the smallest ultrafine particles are disproportionately influenced by aircraft activity. All right, so very quick ending to all of this. What are some strategies to address some of these airport-related air pollution and health risks? Environmental monitoring. There's evidence that supports the value of expanding measurement of airborne lead, ultrafine particles, and other pollutants to better characterize air quality around local airports. For health monitoring, data suggests that exposure reduction solutions targeting blood lead testing for children living near airports and cardiovascular health assessments for adults in higher exposure areas can help identify and mitigate risks for at-risk populations. In terms of community engagement, there's quite a bit published, and I think a lot of you practice this through this forum. But partnering with local communities to share information on air quality, support voluntary testing, and discuss potential solutions can strengthen public understanding and participation. And let me just have like a meeting control of the Roman slide here. But and then in terms of solutions, studies suggest that there are a number of ways to mitigate exposures that include removing the source, and so using unleaded aviation gasoline, potentially sustainable aviation fuels to reduce emissions, and other solutions. All right, I want to touch a little bit back on this idea of blood lead testing. From other jurisdictions, we've looked at papers that investigate that association between blood lead levels in children and aviation. Those studies were relying on data sets collected through routine preventive care and blood lead testing of individual children in their healthcare provider's office. And this is actually a figure from a paper in 2023 that looked across multiple states at the proportion of children tested for blood lead level between 2017 and 18. And we could see that on average, approximately 20% of children in our country are routinely tested for blood lead levels. On the high end, states like Massachusetts have almost 50% of their children tested. And in Washington State, we're reporting approximately 4% of the children being tested for blood lead levels. Lastly, I just want to share briefly about some current activities that are taking place at the university related to this topic. One is there is active air monitoring north and south of Sea-Tac. This is in partnership with Puget Sound Clean Air Agency and University of Washington. It includes 2 fixed sites, again, north and south of Sea-Tac, but also mobile monitoring north and south of Sea-Tac and around King County Airport. And then there's also some activities related to modeling the impact of sustainable aviation fuels on community air quality. There's some efforts to do community-led lead sampling near King County Airport. This is a demonstration project with residents and is intended to show the feasibility of training residents to collect and interpret and co-interpret results. There's education and outreach efforts. And then lastly, there's some actual indoor air quality interventions, in particular, an asthma clinical trial looking at the impact of a HEPA filter on asthma outcomes for children living in proximity to the airport. There's more information available here if you follow this QR code. And for those of you who really want to go in depth on this, I have my references here, and I'm always happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll jump in with the first question. What are the other non-airport lead emitters that emit lead into the atmosphere? What kinds of industries would that be?
So there are smelters and also glass manufacturers, essentially processes that volatilize lead either through melting of metals and maybe contaminated with lead. There's also, for example, lead acid battery manufacturers in our region that would use lead in their processes that can potentially emit into the air. So they're more industrial type sources where lead is an essential part of the process or is a contaminant, like in a metal situation.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, you've got a hand up.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you for this presentation, Elena. So I want to preface my question with, I love science. I love everything you've provided, and I believe you. I'm also just trying to contextualize things we hear kind of in the community. And so is there anything that you can share about what almost like the flip side of the argument of everything that you've just presented? I understand you came at us with facts and information, but what would kind of other people say about maybe the causes of some of the pollution, or is the data bad, the measurement is bad? Just what else do you hear, or maybe framing it as like, what do you have to combat in the work you do to kind of make your point? I think it would be helpful for some of us just knowing that, we may get some of those questions ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the case of lead and aviation fuel, the big question is how much lead is too much, right? So It's obviously it's an additive in the gasoline. It's not a high concentration. And likewise, as the aircrafts depart and land, it may or may not be a there's been thought that it may not be impacting blood lead levels of children. And that's why I presented a number of recent studies that do seem to indicate that it is adding to the body burden of the children living in those locations. Whether or not that's happening here in King County, I think is not really well understood. And the obvious question would be to understand what are the blood lead levels of the children in proximity to our local airports. I do want to go back to the EPA finding, which that was the question that was brought to the EPA, which was, well, this is a low concentration of lead. Is it an endangerment to public health? And in fact, and you can go read the report, the answer was yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Austin. That was a great presentation. I'm curious, have HEPA filters, have they been deployed in schools, homes, kind of at-risk properties?
So there's been efforts, I think I glossed over that. There's been efforts by Seattle, King County Public Health, as well as many community groups, and some of them are involved in this roundtable, to obtain HEPA filters and distribute HEPA filters, particularly to those who may be in proximity to roadway sources, aircraft sources, other sources of air pollution, to mitigate those indoor risks. I would say that's a ongoing I don't know if that answers the question, but there is an effort to do that. It's difficult to reach every household and every person who might be impacted.
Okay, and my follow-up question, have these been kind of federal efforts or more state and local efforts? And I don't want to get too political, but it seems that there's not a lot of appetite for environmental protection these days at the federal level. So if they've been federal programs, do we need to put it on our radar to push these, push our state and local legislators to look at these kinds of programs?
It's a great question. I'm aware of state and local efforts because that is, I've interacted with some of those programs, but it's not my area of expertise where I could say with certainty where the funding is.
All right, thank you.
Stephen, you're next.
See how fast I can turn off the mute. Thanks, Eric. I had the privilege last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, of attending the big aviation get together in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which for those of you in aviation, you know what a blast that can be. And I also made sure I tracked down some of the experts around the new unleaded fuels in aviation, and I was really happy to talk with Chris, whose name escapes me, who leads Swift, the Swift manufacturing company, and a few others as well. And I was really encouraged by the progress they're making on bringing unleaded avgas to to different airports. And it was actually, I think the progress is better than I expected to hear. And in fact, I think at some point we could probably get a presentation on that as well, which we're anxiously awaiting the availability of such fuel. So my question is, that's another point for a future time, but for today, great presentation. And, Elena, thank you for that. And, I'm just wondering if you do a study around an airport, how do you know how much of the lead that you might find in the air is attributable, or in the blood levels of people living around the airport, is attributable to aviation?
And so it's a great question. There's a number of different approaches that people have used in the literature. Many of them revolve around this idea of a gradient. So are people who are closer to the source showing a trend of having a higher blood lead level than those who are further away. And that's a potentially powerful way to try and distinguish where these sources are coming from. Another approach that's used is to leverage the dispersion patterns. And so not only to look at the radius distance from an airport, but actually look at the downwind effects versus the upwind effects and try and determine whether or not there are patterns or gradients in the exposures. Now, when you take someone's blood lead levels, that's a cumulative measure. So of course, if the housing stock is older, if they are in proximity to a source of lead, for example, their home uses leaded pipes or has leaded fittings, this kind of there's no way to distinguish between the sources of lead in the blood. But what can be distinguished is these overall spatial patterns that seem to indicate a gradient of exposure away or near the source of interest.
So wouldn't it, if I kind of go on, wouldn't it be true then that given the age of homes that would have leaded pipes and leaded or lead in the pipes or lead in paint would be probably primarily in Georgetown, which is also in the most downwind area of KCIA. So how do you separate out which is what the source is?
I think you'd have to design such a study to try and account for that. So there's many areas in our region that have older home stocks. And so the study would have to be designed to have a control exposed area that is not in proximity to that downwind airport.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Velma has a question in the room.
Thank you, Eric. And Dr. Austin, thank you for coming and giving this presentation. The reason that we had asked Dr. Austin to give this presentation was because of the concerns that the community had. One of the things that I wanted to raise is the issue of when I was in the state legislature, there was a 5-year shorter lifespan of the people that live around the airport versus like in Magnolia, for example, they don't experience that type. Is there a study that has been done on something like this? Like, how do you compare or the life, I guess, how do you compare that kind of data? I guess what I'm trying.
Yeah, I think I do understand what you're asking. There's been attempts to do that both nationwide and locally. So to look at health outcomes, at different distances from an airport. And sometimes there are findings of association between certain health outcomes and distance to the airport. Now, it's very sometimes difficult to interpret those studies because the health outcomes that are being looked at, again, are not necessarily specific to the exposure. So, for example, cardiovascular disease, that's a cumulative illness that's caused through years of exposure to and genetics and many factors will play into the development of cardiovascular disease and early loss of life related to that. However, what helps to make a study more powerful is to have individual level assessments of the risk factors that a person has that can contribute to the development of those disease processes, for example, their access to health insurance, overall health status, but then also detailed information on their exposures to environmental factors that could increase or decrease their chance of developing those illnesses. And one of those factors could be airport-related emissions and traffic-related emissions, both of which potentially have a causal relationship to those types of outcomes. So it's not a great answer, but all that to say, on a population level, it's difficult to conclude whether or not these changes that we see in health outcomes are directly related to an environmental exposure. On an individual level, in a large epidemiology study, it is possible to start teasing out some of those effects.
Another question. You had mentioned that in Washington State, your chart shows that there's only 4% of people that are being tested for lead.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of like get some hints or tips on how we get more people to do that kind of blood testing.
I think that's a great question. I think there has to be involvement of clinicians, because really this is typically something that's done as part of preventive care in early childhood visits. And so even though there could be a reason to do blood lead testing in children, I don't think it's well communicated to clinicians in the state, because clearly we have very different testing rates here.
I have a related question for the airport. What is the airport doing to promote sustainable aviation fuels or the potential of unleaded avgas at the airport?
Well, I yield to my expert on the EAGLE program, Dave Dakota.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. So I'm actually involved in the ACRP study on transitioning airports from unleaded fuel in Washington, D.C. We've been working on that project. It's nearing completion on successful transition to unleaded fuels at airports. I think obviously the biggest challenge right now is just that there is not a drop-in replacement for unleaded fuel. But some of the actions that the airport's taken, we recently just put in as part of the rates and fees that came to the roundtable, an update to reduce the fuel flowage fee for both unleaded fuel as it becomes available, as well as sustainable aviation fuel. And we currently have 2 of our fixed-based operators that are supplying sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, as well as several of our tenants are utilizing high blend SAF. So few of the things that we're doing, and we're just continuing to monitor as the new fuels become available, other ways to incentivize its use.
Thank you. Mark, I do see your hand up. Unfortunately, we're out of time and we're a little over. We have quite a bit more on the agenda, so we'll move on. But I do want to thank Dr. Austin for the really interesting report. Appreciate your time. Okay, we're going to move on to an update from airport staff, and it sounds like the first one is upcoming and recent meetings.
Yes, so hopefully I'm on topic with this. So Jenny and I echo, please feel free to let me know if I'm off track with what you wanted here. So we have an upcoming project advisory committee meeting on the 20th of this month. It's virtual. That will focus on the alternatives. We've taken that first huge view of it and gotten some comments on it. We've taken those comments and made some minor revisions to those alternatives and are taking it back for additional feedback. Once we have that feedback, we'll then take it, incorporate it, and then take that to the first open house on the Vision 2045 alternatives, which is September 25th. It'll be that evening over at the old flight service station off of Ellis Avenue, where the previous meetings have been held.
Sorry, will that be the first opportunity for the public in the roundtable to see the alternatives?
That is correct. That's where we'll have the big boards and able to the consultant team has put together some pros and cons for each alternative, but we'll be looking for community and roundtable feedback on additional pros and cons of each alternative as we slowly refine those alternatives down to a preferred alternative.
All right, thank you. Vision 2045 and Part 150 updates.
So I kind of touched on the meeting part of it there, but I'll just give a high level overview of the last Project Advisory Committee meeting. The last Project Advisory Committee meeting focused on the Part 150 study, specifically around the noise compatibility plan. During that meeting, Roundtable, or I should start saying that our consultant team, RSNH, provided kind of what goes into a noise compatibility plan, what are the legally required to look at, what are the different categories of things that they're required to look at, and then started soliciting ideas from the Project Advisory Committee of different things that maybe they think they should look at in addition to what is required through the Part 150 study. And then they gave the team some filtering guidelines of things that, you know, the airport can do and the airport can't do legally. So that meeting took place. We gathered some great feedback. They're in the process of drafting those meeting notes and gathering all that feedback that'll go up on the website shortly. And then sometime later this fall or early winter, we'll have the open house / public hearing on the noise compatibility plan. And so just a quick reminder on that, it doesn't, you know, we can suggest different things to the FAA that should be looked at or should be looked at in that noise compatibility plan, but then the FAA gets that line item veto whether or not it should be included in that final plan. So that's kind of the high level of what was discussed during the last Project Advisory Committee meeting. And I think those notes should be up shortly if they're not already up.
When was that meeting held?
Oh, it was a week and a half ago.
And are there any roundtable members here tonight that were in attendance that would like to comment any further?
Lisa has her hand raised here in the room.
But it wasn't to make a comment. I was there. I'm always there. Life is subjective. I actually struggle a lot with the 150 sound project because I feel a lot like it is an exercise of appeasement to the public and a bit of an exercise of futility for those that attend. I know that it's I always sit through that 150 study thinking I'm here, I'm listening, I'm paying attention, but ultimately the FAA really does make and break the rules and sets the guidelines. The rest of the world be damned.
You are
sorry.
It is very prescribed of what you have to do. Yeah.
I'll go. I keep going. I do my diligence, but yeah.
And you provided some great feedback during.
But anyway, yeah. Sorry, you guys, but that one's tough for me.
Thanks, Lisa. Was there anyone else in attendance that wanted to comment?
Sorry.
Okay.
Roundtable members.
Yeah. You could tell somebody my question.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to Airport 101 registration.
Let me scroll down to everybody. Don't look at the screen. All right. So the Airport 101 training is coming up August 19th and August 21st. So it'll be a Tuesday and Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. For anyone who from the roundtable who is interested in learning more about kind of the basics that goes into an airport. And if for anyone who is interested, please feel free to let Matt or myself know so we can get you registered. I know it's coming up. So, and the last day to register for the webinar will be on the 18th.
So I do believe that the airport pays for roundtable members to attend. And I've attended in the past, I've mentioned this several times, but I would recommend that all roundtable members attend at least once. I found the training to be really valuable. So I would hope that everyone that has not attended before could take advantage of that. And then I believe I saw an email about Robert's Rules training also. Do you have any further information on that?
Oh, that one's actually tomorrow. Fortunately, saying it's past registration, but I know AAA does hold those online training often. So for the next one, when have more advance notice, we'll definitely include roundtable members to that as well.
Okay. And Matt, I see you've got a hand up.
Yes, that's for Velma. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna ask you, both days are from 11 to 1. So for those of us who are working, can you do something like from 5 to 7? Like one of those days?
Unfortunately, the time are set by AAA. The person who present those webinar, there's not a different time or section, unfortunately.
We can ask them to see in the future if they could hold a meeting, an evening class for folks.
That would be great.
We can provide them that feedback.
Let's see. Troy, I think the next item is yours, the community engagement update.
Perfect. So let me go back to this. So yeah, it's been a busy summer here. Community engagement team in KCIA. We've have table at various community events such as Tanai International District Celebration, as well as yesterday at the Othello Park International Festival. Letting folks know who we are, what we do, as well as inviting folks to the Vision 2025 open house as well. And we also had a chance to attend KCIACC's candidate forum as well. Thank you, Velma, for the invitation. In addition, I have had the opportunity to host some groups of different interns, both from other airports such as Sea-Tac, as well as interns from other King County departments who were involved in the ERA program to come speak to airport team, as well as viewing different facilities, the airfields, the firefighters, and the maintenance. And it's been great to having different folks from different areas to see what we do here at County International Airport. And look forward to, we have a couple more events such as Tukwila Touch a Truck event coming up in a couple weeks. We'll have our fire truck go out there and meet with community members as well. So we have that. Yeah, that is.
Do you get a good response? Do people come to your table and?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I've had a lot of folks who might not know about KCIA because they're like, oh, airport. It's like a Sea-Tac. No, but like here's what we do, right? We wear a lot of different hats, and also. For folks who have comments about Blue Angels, obviously, and always we talk to those folks as well. So yeah,
good.
Troy, you also still have that upcoming September meeting with Georgetown, right?
Yes, that is still on the agenda. I'll be presenting at the upcoming September Georgetown meeting about the parcel update. It'll be letting folks know that okay, here are the options. Here's what's compatible, and basically have kind of like a vision board so folks can, members in Georgetown community can kind of let us know like what they envision this parcel to look like. So yeah, now
when is that meeting?
That is on September 15th.
Would you send us a notice?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the same thing. If you could notify the roundtable, that would be great.
Of course.
Thank you.
I will do that. Yeah, that concludes my update, Chair.
Good. Any other questions for Troy? All right. Let's see. We'll move on to the chair report, and this is just going to be real brief. We did take a list of volunteers for the subcommittee to work on Vision 2045, and we kind of put that on hold until the alternatives were published. And it sounds like that'll be coming up later in September, so we'll have an opportunity to get to work on Vision 2045. I think just as soon as the information is published. And that takes us to new business. I do have a couple of quick items. One is email. I want to find out if anyone is actually, I know that people are still having email issues because I've heard from a couple of Roundtable members just in the past few days. My email access was recently returned. I'm able to access my email at this time, but I guess this question is for the airport. If there are Roundtable members that can't access their email, who should they reach out to now?
So right now, reach out to Nadja, myself, and Troy. We can get a ticket opened with King County IT. I'll be honest, it is not a smooth process on the board and commission's emails. They're not super familiar with it. So we really have to track down the right IT person that is familiar with it. I think, though, I don't know if Cameron, our PIO, is on. I think they recently put out additional information on how to access your email for a boards and commissions member. And so if that's the case, we can get that sent out with the links and the instructions.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, we do need to prioritize this because it's been an ongoing issue for quite a while now. I think coming up on a year.
I get your emails to my work email now, and that works really well.
Yeah, I mean, technically, we should be using our official King County email, and I know it hasn't been working for everybody. So yeah, we should make sure that everybody has access to it. I saw also that Mark McIntyre dropped a couple questions in the chat, and we do have a couple minutes left if you want to read those out.
Well, the in regard to SAF incentives, I'll just send a note to Ayako or Jenny, and it can be included. I don't want to waste time on that. But just a quick recollection. So back in April, Kristen Klein from King County did a brief budget presentation, and following that, I kind of reviewed the airport portion of the budget and had lots of questions. And I think we had decided to form kind of a working group to generate a list of questions for Kristen. I know Velma and I have worked together on that, and I sent Eric and Allie the kind of aggregate list of questions. So we're just kind of waiting for yours and Allie's review on that. But my intent, if there's interest amongst the roundtable, is to work with Kristen to develop a presentation on the airport portion of the budget, just to make roundtable members more familiar with it, understand how that portion of the budget works and how it might be different from other budgets they've been used to working with. So I'm hoping maybe PRR can survey the roundtable, see or gauge the level of interest, and then we'll move forward from that.
Can we get a sense of the level of interest now in this meeting?
The budget?
So I think the question is, are you interested in Mark working together with Kristen Klein to develop a presentation to explain more about the airport budget and answering the questions that Velma, you, and Mark put together for Kristen after looking at the budget?
I would be interested.
I think if you're interested, if you're in the room, raise your hand, and if you're in the virtual room, yeah, raise your virtual hand.
Only 3 people.
Give people time. They got to find the reaction button, the right reaction button.
There was a time when every meeting we would have a budget report. And then at some point, I think the conversation went to, just having it included in the minutes. So you could take a look at it and go through it. And it was actually pretty comprehensive. I might even have old copies of that.
Just say so. Maybe
Well, we do have, I mean, the financial report is a part of every meeting packet, but it sounds like that's not quite the same
You want
as
it more comprehensive.
I wanted to basically also check in about the community aspect of it, or the community, like how much of that money is going to go to, for example, community outreach or working with the community on some of their concerns. Like, for example, the lead study, how can we go to the communities to talk about, can you get your kid, take a blood sample? That kind of outreach that we wanted to try to do. And then, like the question that I had would be like, for example, that parcel that the airport is gonna buy or is buying. So I wanted to know what use is that gonna be? And is there a perspective from the community on how to use that?
And is that a budget question?
Yeah, I think the budget question that I heard you ask, Velma, is how much is the airport dedicating to community engagement on these various questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would probably be a perfectly appropriate question for a standalone budget meeting.
So I think there were 3 or 4 people in the room who had their hand raised, and then 3 people in the virtual world who had their hand raised. Was there anybody who didn't get a chance to put their hand up in the virtual world? And this would be, again, you're expressing interest in another presentation from Kristen that she would do in partnership with Mark to answer the questions that came up when she presented the budget earlier this year.
That's right.
I'm not seeing any new hands, Jenny.
Not seeing any new hands. Okay. So, Mark, it doesn't look like there's I mean, this isn't an official vote, but a quorum for that presentation, but it does look like there's some localized interest. I think one thing that Kristen said that she would be happy to do is to, for those who are interested, to have a meeting answering those questions. Would that be something that you'd, for the, 6 or so people who are interested, would you be able to head that up?
Yeah, sure. I like I say, I don't want to waste people's time. I know I had some questions and I thought others might have similar questions. I did want to note, it looks like Holly gave a thumbs up. I don't know if that was to the budget question or something else, but I didn't want her thumbs up to get overlooked.
Yeah, my hand was up and I'm on my phone, so I don't know if he's.
I did see Allie's hand.
Yeah.
I have so I think I misunderstood the question and what we were voting on, quite honestly. And so let me wrap my head around it. I didn't understand that the question was, do we want this to be part of a future presentation? I actually thought you were asking for a handful of us to come together and create a more specific list of questions about the budget. And I am supportive of that.
Okay.
Creating a list of more comprehensive questions about the budget.
Okay.
And then later having the answers to that be presented. I'll vote for that.
Okay.
I don't know if that changes anybody else's vote, but I'm in now.
Yeah, so basically what Mark and I were doing was getting the questions, and then
I was slow, but I got it.
Great, thank you, Lisa.
Okay. So Jenny, you'll help organize that?
Yeah, it sounds like in general, people are not interested in joining a committee. And I think that Mark and Velma were the committee to put together the list of questions, but people might be are interested in seeing a presentation, Mark, that you and Velma and Kristen would put together answering those questions.
Okay, well, that's how we'll proceed. And maybe we'll do, an initial presentation from Kristen, and then if further questions come out of that, or I'm happy to work with Lisa to get her questions added to our list. But Lisa, I'd like to put a little bit of a deadline on it because we've been dragging this out since April, and I'd like to keep it moving forward.
Wait. I thought that, like Holly, I was no to the committee, but yes to more comprehensive. I'm putting that back on you and Thelma.
Okay.
Yeah,
I apologize if I misunderstood. I thought you said you had some questions as well.
I think you have the go ahead, Mark.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Same here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, let us know when you're ready for that, and we'll make sure it's on the agenda for that meeting.
Will do.
Okay.
Yeah, and that takes us right to the end. We're out of time. I do want to ask if Matt Hayes is still on. Is this your last meeting, Matt?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, well, then thank you for sticking it out to the very end. And thanks for your service. And hopefully I'll see you around the museum.
Oh, yeah. I hope to see many of you around the field. It's believe it or not, I've been doing this 8 years. Somehow I must have gotten 2 years extension for pandemic or something. So thank you to everybody. I always appreciate people that are willing to put their time, energy, and grit into getting things done for the community, whatever that means. And I also appreciate all the people on the airfield and around the airfield that make a difference. So great to see you all, and come on by the museum sometime.
Oh, wait. Is there somebody that's going to take your place from the museum?
I'm happy to submit some names if that makes sense. I'm an at-large member, so I didn't want to take the. I don't want to presume that at-large position could be filled by a museum individual. But if that's something that you would like some names submitted, I could happily do so.
Mr. Chair, is that what we want to do?
So I could jump in here. So we will be posting the position just as we do any other roundtable positions, and there'll be the application process for that. And thank you, Matt, for your service to the airport.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you all. And we don't need to officially adjourn since it was unofficial this month. And we'll see you all in September.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
That's good.